Chapter 1. The Stranger of Blackpine Woods. Blackpine was a forgotten settlement buried deep inside the cold wilderness of the American frontier in the year 1830, and people whispered that beyond the old wooden fences, where the forest grew darker than night itself, strange things moved in the shadows that no human mind was meant to understand. And into this uneasy village came a science teacher named Elias Ward, who seemed stranger than the forest itself, because he wandered alone at night holding a dim lantern that flickered like a dying soul, while he wrote mysterious lines inside a worn journal that made the villagers uneasy, as if every word he wrote carried a silent scream. And people said that Elias was not just a teacher, but someone searching for something ancient and forbidden, because his eyes always held a cold glimmer that did not belong to the living. And on the night he arrived, the sky fell silent, and the animals cried out once, then stopped, as though the whole forest had paused to listen to him breathe. And when he first spoke to the sheriff, he only said that he had come to find an old object buried somewhere in Blackpine Woods, and that he had no need for help or guidance. And the sheriff felt a strange heaviness in his chest, for the tone of Elias was not the tone of a normal traveler, but of a man carrying a burden carved from nightmares. And the elderly women of the village whispered that something ancient sleeps inside those woods, something that awakens the dead memories of the land itself. And when Elias stepped into the forest for the first time, the air grew heavy as stone, and a foul smell rose like rot from beneath the ground. And Elias felt something stir against his thoughts, as though the forest itself were breathing around him. And then he saw a burned black line carved into the soil stretching deep between the trees, and his first thought was that lightning could not have struck here, because storms avoided Blackpine like something alive and afraid. So what force could have burned the earth like this? And when he touched the soil, a freezing pulse rushed through his hand like icy fingers gripping his bones, and he whispered that what he sought was near, and something ancient was sleeping beneath these roots. And it was not in need of protection, because it was the protector itself. And that night, the villagers saw a strange glow deep inside the forest, flickering like a heartbeat, as if something beneath the ground was waking from a century-long slumber. While Elias kept his house lit until dawn and wrote without rest, as though whatever he had seen refused to leave his mind. And in the early morning, when he returned to the village, his eyes looked haunted, and his clothes were covered with thick soil, as though he had crawled out from the earth itself. And he only said, "I found it," but the trembling in his voice revealed that whatever he had discovered inside Blackpine Woods was not meant to be seen by human eyes. Chapter 2. The thing beneath Blackpine. The morning after Elias claimed he had found what he was searching for, the village air grew strangely still, as if the wind itself refused to enter Blackpine. And the people watched from their porches as Elias walked again toward the forest, holding that same dim lantern, whose light no longer flickered like a flame, but glowed like something breathing inside it. And the villagers felt a sharp coldness in their bones, for they knew that the forest had swallowed many hunters, but never before had it pulled someone like Elias deeper and deeper, as though calling him by name. And when Elias stepped between the tall, crooked trees, he felt an unseen pressure surrounding him like a silent crowd, watching him breathe, and the ground beneath his boots pulsed faintly, as if something alive lay right under the soil. And he whispered to himself that the burned line in the earth must lead somewhere. And so he followed the blackened trail deeper than before, until the sunlight died behind him and the forest turned into a single wall of darkness. And in that heavy silence, he began to hear a faint rhythmic sound like a distant heartbeat echoing through the roots and rocks. And the sound grew stronger with each step, until he reached a hollow where the burned line ended beneath a massive fallen tree whose bark was peeled open as though torn by claws older than the forest itself. And in that hollow, Elias felt the ground vibrate like a slow breath rising from the deep earth, and he knelt down, placing his hand on the soil, and something cold and intelligent moved beneath his palm as if answering his touch. And suddenly, the earth cracked with a soft groan, and a faint glow pushed upward from the split ground, forming a narrow path of light that twisted downward like a spine. And Elias felt his mind bend with a terror he did not understand, yet could not resist, because whatever slept beneath Blackpine Woods was calling him with a voice that spoke directly inside his thoughts, and told him that he had been chosen long before he was born. And as he crawled into the glowing split in the earth, the air turned thick and warm like breath on the back of his neck, and he felt as though invisible hands were guiding him deeper, until he reached a chamber carved not by humans, but by something older than civilization. And in the center of the chamber lay an enormous stone marked with symbols that shimmered like moving shadows, and Elias knew instantly that these symbols were not carved. They were alive and watching him, and the heartbeat sound thundered around him as the stone pulsed with light that grew brighter and brighter until it wrapped around him like a cocoon, and a voice rose inside his skull whispering that this was the heart of Blackpine, and that its guardian had waited centuries for one who understood the language of nature and science and death itself. And Elias felt his sanity crack like thin glass as the stone opened with a slow grinding sound, revealing a hollow inside it where something long and twisted lay curled as though sleeping. And when it shifted just slightly, the air turned colder than winter, and Elias felt a terror so deep it numbed his breath, yet he could not look away, because he realized at last that he had not come to study the forest had summoned him for a purpose. And as he stared at the shifting shape inside the stone, a single thought formed in his mind like a whisper carved from darkness, and it said, "I am awakening." Chapter 3. The Awakening in the Heart of the Earth. The moment the creature inside the stone stirred, Elias felt the air thicken around him like a living shroud, and the chamber pulsed with a deep rumble that echoed through his bones, as though the earth itself were speaking. And in that terrible sound, he heard the memories of the land screaming with voices older than history, telling him that Blackpine had been built on the remains of something that was never meant to awaken. And as the stone slowly unfolded like a flower blooming in darkness, a curled figure inside began to rise, its shape stretching in a way no natural body should move, and Elias felt his mind strain under the weight of the sight. Yet he could not look away, because the creature was not simply alive, it was aware, and its awareness pressed against his thoughts like a cold hand gripping his skull, and the faint glow inside the chamber brightened, until every root and stone shimmered as if they were breathing, and the creature spoke without sound, entering directly into Elias' mind, telling him that it had slept beneath the forest for centuries, waiting for the one who could understand its purpose. And Elias knew in that terrible instant that he had not been chosen for his knowledge, but for his weakness, because the creature needed a mind that could be broken and remade. And as its presence filled him, a wave of fear swallowed him so violently that he felt his own identity slipping like soil between fingers. And he tried to turn away, but an invisible force held him still, and the creature unfolded further, revealing limbs like branches carved from shadow and eyes that glowed with an ancient hunger. And it rose higher, towering over him, while the chamber trembled as if the world above were sinking. And the creature whispered that the forest had protected its slumber for generations, feeding on the fear and misery of those who lived near Blackpine. And now it was time to awaken fully and reclaim the surface, and Elias felt the roots around him writhe like serpents as they wrapped around his legs, pulling him closer, and the heartbeat sound grew louder until it felt like his own chest would burst. And in the chaos, he realized that the only way to stop the creature was to shatter the stone heart from which it had risen. But he knew he had no strength to fight something born from the earth itself. Yet still, he forced his trembling hands toward the glowing stone surface, and with every movement his vision darkened, and the creature screamed inside his mind, telling him that resistance was useless, and that he belonged to it. But Elias pressed his palm against the stone, and felt a surge of energy explode through him like burning ice, and the chamber shook violently as cracks shot through the stone heart, and the creature staggered back with a roar that tore the air apart. And Elias felt his body breaking under the force, yet he pushed harder as the stone crumbled and the glow burst outward like a dying sun, and the entire chamber collapsed, round them sending root, soil, and darkness crashing in waves. And in that final moment, Elias saw the creature dissolve into dust, swept away by the collapse, and he felt his own consciousness slipping into the void. And he whispered that Blackpine was safe, though no one would ever know what he had done. And as the earth swallowed the chamber completely, the forest above grew silent once more, as if sealing the secret forever. And 2 days later, when the villagers searched for Elias, they found no trace of him, only the burned black line in the soil, now cold and lifeless, as though whatever had once moved beneath it had finally gone still. And the people of Blackpine whispered for generations that the forest had claimed the strange teacher, But they never knew that he had given his life to stop something far older and far darker than the world itself, a creature that would now sleep again for centuries, waiting for another weak and curious mind to awaken it.